Hello and welcome to that Peter Crouch podcast with Chris Stark, and unfortunately no Sids today.
No Sids today. Do you know where he is?
Apparently he's on his anniversary.
Right. He's been getting around a bit of late, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has been, I don't know. Shouts are I've lost the dressing room. I don't know. But we should introduce our guest today. It's Mr. Hal Robson-Kanu. How are you?
Very good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Crouchy.
Thank you very much.
It's great, and welcome to the Chumba One Bar. It's great you're hanging out with us today. Can we just start with an apology about the heat? There's no aircon in the Chumba One Bar, sadly. So we're having to deal with... Well, we've got some fans, but I mean, it's one for us and one for the guys behind the cameras.
It's all right. Crouchy stopped paying the electricity bill.
Yeah, mate, listen, we're cost cutting it.
Devastating.
Not only have I lost the dressing room, it's we're running a shit show of a business.
I'm sweating already. It's going to be a sweaty episode. We should say as well, if you can hear fans in the background, there was a huge debate as to whether we should be allowed them, but we've got to draw the line somewhere here. You know, hopefully it won't impact the quality of this podcast. I've got a real sweaty arse right now. It's not pleasant. You boys are in trousers.
I know we are. But what? Just before we start, and we get into how here. What have you done to your hand?
Well, I don't know if I really want to say it.
It's a strong hand.
Really?
It does look like one of those. I've actually just come from the hospital. There's a hospital down the road from here, so I've just come from here. It's so a couple of days ago, I was in the swimming pool, took my little lad, I'll be honest with you, took my little lad swimming, and he was in the swimming pool having his lesson, right? And his kid come up to me, and his mum and my wife were chatting away. So I went down to give him a high five. And you know, when you do that high five at the side, down below, you're too slow. When he did the side one, he's done me there. He's absolutely...
Hold on, you've broke... your little boy's done your bango.
Someone else's little boy done me with the old at the side
Really?
one. But he's gone at it like Andy Murray or something. Not the follow through.
Forehand.
Injured by a 5-year-old here.
Christ almighty.
I've got something for that. Something that helps with recovery. So we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, well, that's why we brought you in.
That's why we're here to help the hand. But talk us through it. Like, obviously, what are you up to at the moment, Hal? Obviously, we've got the turmeric shots here. Raw hydrate. I've spoke to you before. I am a subscriber.
Love that.
To the turmeric shots, I have to say.
Yeah.
I believe in it. But talk us through it.
Yeah, so basically, like a lot of people won't realise, like my background as I was a young professional, left Arsenal, joined Reading as a 15-year-old. I suffered 2 major ACLs. So knee-high challenge, basically my left knee snapped in half, went beyond my right knee, complete anterior cruciate ligament rupture. Went to the surgeon, had surgery, reconstruction. 12 months later, began playing and training again. And the first game back, I did exactly the same injury. And again, you'll know, like, doing your ACL, like, it's a big deal. So I went back to the same surgeon, and the surgeon basically said, like, look, firstly, like, it's going to be very hard for you to play at the level you thought you were going to play at. And secondly, like, you're never going to play without pain or restriction again. And so went through the surgery, was committed to, my dream was playing in the Premier League, like as a young lad, like that's what I wanted to do. Went through the rehabilitation, another 12 months. And as I began playing and training again, I was just constantly hampered with pain, inflammation and swelling in my knee. Like I'd wake up in the mornings and my knee would be a balloon. Like I'd have to get like fluid extracted out of it every other day. Now had chronic tendinopathy in my knee as well. So I was struggling to physically like compete and get back to the level that I was at previously. So spoke to the physios and doctors at the club and was like, I'm really struggling here. I need like support. And they kind of said like, the surgeon told you this was going to be the case. You're going to have to get on with it. But what they did do, they said, look, we can prescribe you some anti-inflammatories and painkillers. So I started effectively popping these anti-inflammatories, painkillers, things like ibuprofen, paracetamol, diclofenac. And within 2 weeks, my body had a complete adverse reaction to them. So I started passing blood in my urine, severe nausea, couldn't sleep. And it got to a point where I had to stop taking this standard medication, but I was still constantly hampered with this chronic pain, inflammation and swelling. And so it was at that point in time that my dad and I basically began asking the question, like, there must be a natural way to reduce pain, inflammation and swelling. And we basically went on a research binge, began looking at various different cultures around the world, various different, civilizations, ancient Asian cultures, Ayurvedic practices. And we began to come across like relatively readily available ingredients, but ingredients that weren't in a convenient format. So things like whole watermelons, things like pomegranates, pineapples, ginger roots and turmeric roots. But it was all about having them in their rawest format and over a sustained period of time. And anecdotally, they reduced pain, inflammation and swelling. And yeah, long story short is, my dad sourced all of these ingredients, began blending them into this like golden liquor. And within 6 weeks of consuming this blend, I was completely pain-free. And so that was the journey of what is now the Turmeric Co. That's how it came about. And I used this blend effectively as my secret weapon throughout my career. So a couple of months later, I was able to get back playing and training. A year later, I made my first team debut at Reading Football Club. A year after that, I made my international debut for Wales. And then a year after that, I made my Premier League debut when we got promoted to the Premier League with Reading, and I was able to do all of that pain-free.
That is actually incredible, and like an amazing explanation about it, to be honest.
I always remember, that decision, we've talked about it before, wrestling with leaving football. It's a big decision. It's one of the biggest decisions that you must come across in your career, because it's hard to end something. But this business side of things, you kind of felt that was something that could take you out of football.
To be honest, like I wasn't never really thinking about it as like a global or massive business. It was more just like, how can we get this product into people's hands? Like, how can we actually help people, right? Because it helped me, it helped my family, it helped my friends, it was helping a few of my teammates at the time. Whenever they had an injury, my dad would have to produce more because I'd give it out to them because we wanted them back on the pitch. And
so your teammates were all on it, but made by your dad.
Yeah, exactly.
that's amazing.
Yeah. So it was, it was nuts. It was a crazy time. But
did they get a funny reaction from players?
They would always like, and I did it like discreetly, but as I went through my career, they'd always be wondering like, what are you have? Like, what is that you're drinking with breakfast? Like, what are you having? Like, and I'd be like, oh, it's just something my dad makes. Like, I use it to help recovery, etc. But then I began giving it to a few of my teammates. So when I was at Reading at the time, Paul McShane, Stephen Quinn, like they used it for a couple of weeks and were like, like how you need to bring that back in. And I'm like, my dad's he can only produce so much. Like, it was impossible to produce any more than like a couple of hundred a week. So yeah. Like,
I wonder if that still exists at Reading, but it's named after you. It's a bit like, there's this video I always like, and it was when Mahrez was at City and he ordered the same food. It was this chicken pasta. I think it was Riyad Mahrez, this one. And so then every player would go and order this, but it was by his name. It became a tradition. And I wonder if it... it was something like, I reckon it's a Riyad pasta. I think it was. Pasta, yeah. And I reckon it lives on. Yeah, and maybe it's the same with you. Well, did you have this anywhere?
No.
Sort of food or drink tradition?
No, like I said, I think the biggest one was with Gareth Bale at Tottenham. I was like, because he was so fit. He was so fit, strong, quick. I was like, what an athlete. Like, what's he eating? I was watching his diet and he's fucking beans on toast. Yeah. I was like, what's in these beans? So I started getting on it. I didn't get faster.
Now, you see, what you should have had is more of a business mind here and started producing the beans with your father.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Right, Hal, obviously... We're get into your career, right? Shame Sids isn't here because there's quite a lot of similarities between, obviously you were at Arsenal as a kid and then ended up at Reading. Yeah. Like, talk us through that process and how hard was that to come back after being were you let go by Arsenal?
Yeah. So I joined Arsenal as a 10-year-old. So I began playing Sunday League football, sort of 7, 8 years old. I was the goalie, and we never really got a look in. Like, my best mate, his dad was the coach, but my favourite player at the time was Peter Schmeichel. So I was like more than happy being in goal. And I think I played like a season in goal, did all right, but I would never get an opportunity outfield. And in one game, the striker at the time got injured, so he had to come off. And there was one sub, because you always had like one sub in the Sunday League. And, bit of a, chubby fella, couldn't really get around the pitch. And they were like, oh, well, put him in goal and put Hal up front. So I've gone up front. So I've gone up front, and I think we were losing the game like 4-1, and we ended up winning it like 5-4, and I'd scored all the goals. Wow. And so began playing regularly in the Sunday League. I think I scored like 70 goals in 20 games in a season, and then got scouted by Arsenal. And as a 10-year-old, went to a trial at Hale End, and Liam Brady was the academy manager at Arsenal. So ended up signing with them and was with them for 5 years. Like, it was an incredible experience. And it was obviously during the period of Arsene Wenger and the Invincibles, and everywhere was just immaculate. You know, it's like all of the schoolboys, you'd get to head off to Shenley once a month, watch the first team train, and it was just like eye-opening to see like the standard and how everything was just like immaculate, from the entrance to the pitches to the food. And so that was a really good like upbringing of standards.
Who were the players there at that time at Arsenal?
So it was all the Invincibles. So it was
really?
Vieira, Henry, Adams,
Sidwell.
so he would have probably been in the academy, yeah. So he would probably been, coming through.
Yeah.
Like it was Jermaine Pennant was beginning to break through.
Ashley Cole.
Ashley Cole, Robert Pires, like unreal. It was incredible. And you'd get to go to all of the home games as a schoolboy. But I was relatively small as a kid, so I was a late developer, and at 15, like I remember playing in games where like my teammates, some of them had like beards, full-grown beards, and were like physically developed. They'd obviously gone through that, growth spurt, and I just wasn't that physical. And Liam Brady pulled me aside and said, "Look, we think you've got a great left foot, but like physically, we don't think you're going to be strong enough to play for Arsenal's first team, so we're going to let you go." And that was like the first real like experience of disappointment in my life. Like, I remember leaving Hale End in tears, my dad trying to console me. And it was like, well, what do I do now? Like, my dream was to have a career, right? And so, a couple of days later, Brent got a call from academy manager at Reading, and it was Brendan Rodgers. And he was looking to put a group of players together, build an academy where basically they built a pipeline of young players who could break into the first team. And he took me up to Reading, me and my family, took us to the Madacey Stadium and said, "Look, this is a project here and we feel you can be a massive part of it. You've come from Arsenal, you understand, how to play football. We want to build footballers within this club." So signed for Reading Football Club, 15, and it was brilliant. And it was Steve Coppell was the manager, first team manager at the time, and they were really passionate around building this academy and getting players into the first team. So as a sort of 15-year-old, I was training with the reserves, train every once in a while with the first team, and they wanted to make me one of the youngest ever players for Reading. So I was playing reserve team football, and that was when the injury happened to my knee. So that anterior cruciate ligament happened in a reserve team game. I think I was probably maybe a couple of months away from playing in the first team, but that set me back for 2.5 years. So for 2.5 years, I did not kick a ball, but eventually managed to, as I said, come back. And getting back into the first team physically was the biggest challenge. And once I'd fully recovered from the surgeries, within a few months, I was back into my usual flow and managed to break into the first team. And then that was the journey into professional football. And you know what it's like it's always touch and go. And particularly with the surgeries that I had, like there were nights when I would cry myself to sleep because it was impossible. Like I was close to getting released, close to not getting that professional contract. But in the end, like obviously just managed to persevere and forged out, half decent career.
So when you were a young lad at Reading, whose boots were you on?
So when I signed as a scholar, I was boot boy for Steve Sidwell, Dave
That's a leading question.
And Lee Willita. Yeah,
How was he? Did he give a good tip at Christmas?
Yeah, to be fair, like he was, they were, and it was old school then, football's changed massively. And even in the last decade, again, it's changed so much so to the point where in football, they don't even have boot boys anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely absurd. It's the best grounding, having to be in training before all of the first team, those winter months where you're cleaning the boots and you're having to crack the ice outside in the water tub, builds that character. But yeah, we had a few old school heads in the team, obviously Siddy, Graham Stack was there for a while, James Harper, friend of the pod. So we had, it was a good culture, like old school, but good culture. And it was ultimately about like respect, discipline, and turning up when you needed to, and that was something which for me was really good. And City was brilliant with me. Like he probably doesn't even realise I was. Yeah. So to be fair, I'm still waiting for it. So yeah.
Oh no, shocker! You always remember at that age though. I was on David Ginola's boots,
Wow.
and Les was the one you wanted. Les Ferdinand was the man, right? He give you like 200 quid at Christmas, and I remember Ginola. He didn't give me anything, right? And I was like, fucking, I need one player of the year and everything. So I had to tap Les and said, just to let you know, David hasn't given me anything. And he said, no, in our culture, it's always like Happy New Year. And I was like, which he totally blagged it. He obviously didn't know the rules, but give me 60 quid. So got there in the end. I still remember. David Howes was the other one. He was good.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it means a lot.
It's
to a young
massive.
kid like that.
And as a kid, like when I was a scholar, I was earning 55 quid a week. So if you get a tip of 200, 300, 400 quid, it's massive.
Unbelievable.
And the second year as a scholar, I was Lou Alita's boot boy, and he said to me at the start of the year, he was like, for every goal that I score, I'm going to give you a tip of £50. And by Christmas, he'd scored 10 goals in the league, and I was absolutely buzzing.
Yeah,
like I was able to get all of the Christmas presents.
I've not heard of this one before. So you were on a goal
Performance
bonus.
related.
Performance related. On the idea that the boots being extra, that you had a role.
Yeah. And again, like that's, so for me, like now in football, none of the scholars do it. Like it's absolutely absurd.
It's a shame because it kind of gives you a connection to the first team as well.
Yeah,
correct.
Because you're then now around them all the time. You forget the boots, they let you know. They're not cleaned in the right way. You get told. I don't know. It just creates a kind of link between you and the first team. It's a good thing to
It
do.
sounds like a structure that exists, say, in professional kitchens with chefs and the different levels and how you rise through the ranks. The military. It feels to me that structure probably benefits, especially characters that need a bit of direction or discipline. Or
yeah, definitely right. Yeah, 100%. Footballers definitely need that, certainly at a young age. But we have a saying here. This is the Chumbawamba. Obviously, the Chumbawamba song is: you get knocked down, you get back up again, right? Yeah. And back stronger is another theme of ours. You have a cruciate injury at that young age. How mentally tough is that? You haven't broken through yet. You're not a player yet. How difficult is that mentally to overcome?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of people won't have known that I had 2 cruciate ligament injuries. Like even in football, like everyone thought I just came through the academy, went through the usual path. But to go through that, I think like it really helped me build like that perseverance and that discipline. And for any young kid out there, like I was never the best footballer, the best, technically, the best tactically. But one thing you could guarantee for me is like every single day, like I turned up and I gave my all. And I think like that goes such a long way because when you're in a game in a first team and, people's livelihoods are relying on it, right? Like if you get relegated, people lose their jobs at the club, whether it's, the kit man or the, the canteen lady. And it's like, it's real life. And so how do you build a team that you can rely on?
The Turmeric Co is the Wales of the beverage industry because they are the underdogs. They've got Pepsi, Belgium, right? And they're mixing it with the big boys.
I see what you're saying.
Do you know what I'm trying to say?
And also,
or no?
I think you're right. What you're getting me thinking now was this the secret sauce to Euro 2016?
Without
Did
doubt.
you have everyone on this stuff?
Yeah. So there was a limited supply available because at that point in time, my dad was still making it in the kitchen.
Oh, right.
And we were away for long periods. So he was having to send it out in parcels to me. But yeah, like I was using it throughout. And it was my secret sauce, which helped me allow to, create a special moment for the nation.
Yeah, we've skipped a little bit, and obviously I want to get on to West Brom and Reading as well. But since we're there, we have to obviously talk about that Euro 2016 and what a special experience. And how did it come about? Was it just all the stars aligning and all the players being kind of in the prime of their life at the right time? Because Wales is, in football terms, it's the furthest they've ever gone, right?
Yeah. It was an insane moment in time, and like. It would be so hard to like replicate that again. Like you said, we had a global superstar in our team, but then we also had like real top talent, the likes of, you know, Aaron Ramsey, Joe Allen, Ashley Williams, who are all playing at, you know, major clubs or being linked to these major teams. And that's like, yeah, you need that to perform at any international level, right? Because it's the highest level of professional sport. But what we also had was that togetherness and that commitment and that internal belief that, you know, if we all turn up, like we can do something that hasn't been done before. And yeah, that's what we did.
It felt like there was an amazing togetherness. Like the crowd was just like, it was amazing.
I was in the fan part, you know. I was in France. It was incredible, the atmosphere. Everything about it was just
being able to create something like that. Obviously, you know, my time with England, it was a bit disappointing, to be honest. We had good moments, we had great moments, but in major tournaments we didn't really fulfill expectations. Whereas obviously with that tournament, it feels like you kind of overachieved, really. And to give the people that much enjoyment must have been so special.
And we saw it, and we were feeding off that as well. Like, it wasn't a case of, you know, we felt completely aligned with the nation and with the fan base. Like, we knew the impact that we were having on the nation as we progressed through the tournament and won those key games, you know, had those special moments, and that sort of feedback loop, like, just generated that momentum.
What made that feedback? Who did you most feel that from? How was it relayed to you?
I know the management staff quite well. I did my coaching badges in Wales.
Nice.
So I know Osh, obviously. Chris Coleman, some of the backroom team. And good people, right?
Yeah, very good people. Very good people. And look, like, for Wales as a nation, like, I remember I made my debut under John Toshak. And when I made my debut, Wales were 140th or something in the world. And I turned up to this first camp, and no disrespect to, you know, John Toshak, but it felt like a Sunday league set up. Like, the balls weren't ready. You know, there wasn't really any organisation or any prep done. The team was sort of named last minute, and it was like, what's going on here? And my expectations were, you know, sort of high. I was thinking, goodness me, like, it's going to be amazing. And I came away thinking, like, you know, that's not quite what I was expecting. But John Toshak, he didn't last long in the role, and Gary Speed obviously came in. And I remember the first camp under Gary Speed, we turned up and everything was immaculate. Like, the balls were immaculate. Everything was fresh. Like, the cones, the pitch was all prepared. The sessions were prepared. The schedules, the agenda, the itinerary was all done in advance, and everyone was on time for everything because of Gary Speed. And so he was the real catalyst for that group of players within the nation. And even, like, little things, right? He said at the time, like, one of the things he said in his first camp was, look, like, I know we've got a lot of players here who might have been, you know, born in, you know, England or born in other parts, you know, of the world, but you have Welsh heritage. Like, one thing that I expect is that everyone learns and sings the national anthem. So I remember, like, on that first camp, like, sitting in the room with Neil Taylor, who's the left back, played for Swansea, and he was teaching me the national anthem. I was literally like learning it. And, like, little things like that just built that togetherness and that momentum. And off the back of it, again, you know, tactically, there was a lot of work that they did, and they changed our approach, made us solid as a group. So we weren't easy to break down. And I think that's where, when you get to international level, if you go gung-ho, toe for toe with the majority of international teams, you'll just get picked apart. And so all of that happened, and we began to get momentum. And we had Craig Bellamy as a senior player in the team as well, and he was, like, performing really well for us, and he was driving those standards under Gary Speed. And yeah, like, we went on some crazy runs. You know, I think we went sort of 5, 6, 7 unbeaten at international level, which is very hard to do. And yeah, like, that was the real catalyst, and that gave us that sort of platform to ultimately achieve what we eventually were able to achieve under Chris Coleman, who obviously took the helm.
Yeah, I mean, how difficult was that? I don't want to get too deep into it, but how difficult was that when, obviously, the news about Gary Speed? I know I was close to quite a few players. I know, you know, there were certain people that really struggled with it. How did you find it?
Yeah, it was. I still remember the moment, like hearing the news, and it was certainly surreal. And for us, like as a group, like we all looked up to Gary Speed, and you know the likes of Aaron Ramsey, Gareth Bell, like everyone respected him massively, and you know even Craig Bellamy, like he was Gary Speed was one of the few people who Bellas wouldn't say a word like to, wouldn't cross, because ultimately out of respect, right? And so I think that part of it made it really hard to sort of deal and process with it. And it had a real, you know, knock-on effect for us as a group. But again, like that togetherness, like we had to come through it somehow. And it was a challenging time. And when Chris Coleman came in, like we were on we were ascending as a nation and we were really performing well. And credit to Chris Coleman coming in and stepping in at that time, because he really handled that, you know, he navigated that time, that turbulent time, to sort of give us that stability as a group, and then reinforced the original direction that Gary Speed had put in place. And we began to get that momentum under Chris Coleman, and went on to do what we did.
Okay, so we're kind of skirting around the fact that you scored one of the greatest goals in tournament football.
We've got to break this down. I was watching this goal live. It got nominated for
a Puskas Award.
Yeah, did it?
Listen, I've played football my whole life, right? And I've scored a few goals that I'm very proud of. But one thing I never did was score in a quarterfinal of a major tournament for my country, in a moment against a team far higher ranked than you, and the manner of the goal. I think Johan himself, right, the great man himself, would have been proud of that Cruyff.
Yeah.
Talk us through it.
Which Cruyff?
It was insane. It was insane, and like I think that starting 11 for Belgium was like, it's like £750 million or something stupid like that. And we had played Belgium twice in the qualifying stages of the European Championships. And we were kind of just their bogey team. They couldn't really break us down. And we knew that if we could get a bit of magic from like a Baylor or a Rambo, like we'd have a chance here. And they scored early on in the game, and we were like, whew. And Belgium, I think they were ranked number 2 in the world at the time. And again, playing between the lines, like they could control the game. Like you were doing a lot of running when you went into a game against Belgium. And we were thinking, phew, this is going to be a long night. Like they could tear us apart here. And we just like managed to get, you know, some solidness into the team in that first half, and managed to not concede again. And obviously Ashley Williams got the equaliser, and we went into half time 1-1, and it was like, oof, we're in a game here. Like we could do something here. And then we've gone out for the second half, and to be honest, it is just a blur to me now. Like all I remember is being sat in the changing room after, and Gareth Bell just staring at me. Thinking, what the heck have you just done? And I was like, I honestly don't even know myself. But.
Do you ever have a moment like I do it sometimes? I remember getting in my first squad, and it's the first game in the World Cup, 2006 Paraguay. I'm playing for England, and I'm starting. And I'm sitting in the changing room, I'm looking around like Beckham, Owen, Lampard, Gerrard, John Terry, Rio, and I sat and changed around. I thought it's a World Cup. I'm like, how the fuck did I get here? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It was one of those moments.
How did this happen?
It was one of those moments. Honestly,
like,
it was literally it was like that. And like, you know, I at the time I was I'd just run down my contract at Reading. Like Reading weren't investing into the team. Like we'd come down from the Premier League a couple of years before, had signed a new contract with them, ran down my contract because I was thinking, you know, it's just not got the direction as a club that I want to be at, and I wanted to be back in the Premier League. So I'd run down my contract going into this tournament, which again I wouldn't recommend to anyone because
nervy, right?
Quite
nervy, yeah. I mean, injury, anything.
You know, performance. You know, you're getting judged all the time, and so like. I think it was just such an insane moment. And, you know, like you're saying there, like when you look back on your career, when you finish your career, you realize that careers are literally built on moments. And, you know, some players will go throughout their entire career and not have a moment. They still have a decent career and might have an amazing career, but they don't have moments, right, which are remembered. And yeah, like I basically just had a moment and I'm so grateful for it. But yeah, how it came about, like I can't tell you.
Listen, we're going to dissect it if you don't mind. Obviously, you know, what we 50. We're second half here, aren't we?
Second
like
half,
55, 60 minutes.
So we're all blowing at this point in time, and it's 1-1. And
Great run from
Ramsey does it all of the time. Comes into me there, and I'm just thinking, oh, see you later.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So
you sold 2 of them there.
Yeah, sold 2.
Exactly.
So.
You sold 2 of them. I mean,
but it's quite funny. So in the replay, you'll see like Neil Taylor is running an open. So look, Neil Taylor's here on the left-hand side. He's literally open. That's why everyone was running towards him.
So his
and
run.
he's shouting. He's like, how? He's like, how? And I could see him, but I was like, oh, I think I could create a bit of space here. And I'd bodied him.
That's what I like, though. That's what I like.
Yeah.
So what I love about the goal, it's so much flair and technique, but the strength to hold him off, and then the presence of mind to use the run and Cruyff it.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, in that situation, you can blaze that or you can panic.
Yeah.
You've done the Cruyff and the calmness to tuck it away.
Yeah, no, I saw it and I was like Courtois and he looked massive in that goal. Like there, I can see him in my peripheral and I'm thinking he is massive. So I was like low and hard, managed to put it in the back of the net. And I never did it again, so it was fine.
Yeah, honestly, like it gives me goosebumps. I just, you know, I like people. I just like to see people doing well, and that was a special moment.
But off that. Sorry, Pete. Like just off that. It must still get talked. We're talking about it now. If you go into a pub in Wales, is this the goal that they come and talk to you about?
Do you do it like at least once a year?
Is
I know
just
you live in London.
Is put in front of you?
Yeah,
Or, at least once a year, I'd just go to the centre of Cardiff and go, "How has arrived?"
No, it is like Cardiff is nuts. Like you can't really go to Cardiff too much. So I kind of just keep my head down and sort of finish my career. I'm grateful for what I did, but it is nice when someone mentions it every now and again. You know, it feeds that ego, and you're like, oh yeah, it was quite a good moment. It was a special time, but yeah.
That's such a good idea, Pete. This is what should happen if you don't have a statue in the middle of Cardiff. Is you're right. Once every 6 months, once a year.
Yeah, there must be like a walkabout or something. Straight in.
But you know, like them human statues on the South Bank. You just put yourself out a little plinth and just stand on there for one day. A temporary human statue.
Special.
You deserve it though. It's as you say, phenomenal to have a moment. And to be remembered with a moment like that.
Yeah.
And also, you know, like you've been let go from Arsenal, you know, obviously you've struggled, you've had your injuries, you know, and then you end up with something like that you can hang your hat on. Let's not belittle your career. You know, you had a fantastic career. What was it, 10 years at Reading, were you?
Yeah, so 10 years at Reading.
West Brom.
Went to West Brom after that. So again, after that, it was like, you know, there was a lot of opportunities. Like a lot of them were like international on sort of silly money, like China and, you know, Turkey and Abu Dhabi. And it was like, no, my aim was to get into the Premier League, but I wanted to go to the Premier League where I felt like I could actually feature in the team. You know, I didn't want to go in as like a real squad player. And so, I ended up signing for West Brom back in the Premier League. They'd done really well that season. Tony Pulis was the manager, and from a style of play, like physically, I felt like I could really perform well under him. You know, he wanted his strikers to be mobile, you know, to hold the line, run the channels. So that was really like a strong part of my game. So signed for them, and we had a decent, you know, few years there. And like, you know, had a number of years in the Premier League, had some great times, great moments, and kind of got to a point where I was 31 and still playing in the Premier League, but the business was growing relatively quickly. You know, I believe that, you know, we could have a tangible impact on society. There isn't as much disease and ailment in the world than there is today. Like there hasn't never been as much as there is. And it's like, why is that? For me, a big part of that is our food system, you know, and lifestyle. And so, I just felt the opportunity to build a global brand and business with a product range that actually works was an opportunity to take. So I decided to finish early professional football and focus solely on the business.
That is such a difficult thing to do, though. Like, obviously, you love the game. You can tell as much as I do. And for me, letting go of the game was so hard. And I think you have to make a conscious decision. Obviously, you must have been obviously going well, but I still think it's a brave decision. You definitely could have had offers elsewhere.
Were you in talks elsewhere? Or?
Yeah. There was quite a few talks, and it was just like I said, it was almost like, do you sort of play out your career and, you know, move to a club, you know, you got to move your family, you got to move. It's a big commitment. And that's the thing, like, as much as a fan base and supporters, like, you see your team turn up for 90 minutes on a Saturday, like, you don't really realize the level of commitment that has to go into turning up ready to perform for 90 minutes on a global stage. Yes, like, the benefits and the rewards are all amazing. You know, it's an incredible lifestyle, but you have to sacrifice so much. And that's why, like, in football now, like, you'd see, you know, I find it so funny when people would be like, you know, compare a player, or, you know, it's who's better, Messi or Ronaldo? And someone would be like, oh yeah, no, Ronaldo's shit, man. Like, Messi's the one. And you're like, fuck it, do you know how good he is? Like, to get,
he's gone through so much to get where he is.
Yeah, and it's like, and even like whether it's a Premier League player or Championship player or even like League One players, like, to get to where they have got to, it's harder to become a professional footballer than it is to get into Oxford or Cambridge. Like, it is the creme de la creme. And so, yeah, like, I just respect that so much. But for me, at that point in my life, it was more like, look, I genuinely believe I can create something, you know, which will supersede what I've done in professional football terms.
You weren't tempted to put your name on it? You didn't want to go down the Dr. Pepper route?
Dr. Pepper?
Yeah.
Is he a real doctor, by the way?
Is he a real doctor, yeah. No. So we kept it nice and basic, the Turmeric Co. But yeah, like, within it, you know, the business now, like, we obviously had to set up manufacturing. We had to scale manufacture alongside the growth of the business. So we had to upscale that. You know, I run operational manufacturing teams. We've obviously got, you know, sales and marketing teams within the business. But yeah, for us, like, we're playing now in a equally competitive space where you have to turn up all the time. You have to show up. You've got to give your best. You need to be the best in order to perform. And performance for us is, you know, getting the product into people's hands and getting the testimonials back from them and seeing the impact that we have. So
this is making me feel slightly guilty about playing Mario Kart with Marko Nautovic and Bojan when I was 32. So building a business.
We started dabbling with podcasts.
In a bizarre way, it was a very similar turn of events for me, because the podcast kind of took off, and, you know, I had a book that went really well, and I found myself kind of in this space.
Yeah.
And I was a lot older than you. You know, I retired at 38, but it was kind of like, I maybe could have done another year, but I kind of thought, you know, this is going well, and I'd pursue this kind of career, and you know, it's going well.
No, but for me, like, I felt better physically than I had ever done at the age of 31. So it was very much a conscious, like, decision. But, like, yeah, it's one thing I would say about professional sport, and I mentioned, like, how competitive it is, professional football. Like, they're looking at players and understanding, like, behind the scenes of, you know, the pressures that players are under. Like, I would say, like, there is more depression in professional football than in any other industry. Like, there are a lot of players who struggle with their careers, but then also that transition from career into, you know, what you do post, you know, and if you think professional footballers, lots of adulation, you know, lots of rewards for what you're doing, but it's only there for a very short space of time when you look at, like, life in the grand scheme of things. And I think there's a lot more that needs to be done around, like, the mental health side of, you know, professional football and professional athletes in general. But for me, professional football is such a high intense, highly focused, like, high pressurized environment where the care isn't really there.
It can feel from the outside, at least, it's quite unforgiving in places as well. There's a footballer, well, obviously not going to name, who basically had to stop playing because he was suffering from depression. But the way he described how the manager was dealing with him, I just felt it seemed totally unsympathetic to his situation. Because it was almost viewed as a kind of, this is a private problem for you to deal with. And yes, there could be offers of support and that, but it came back to the fact the manager's choosing players that then play that weekend, and he just didn't feel supported in that way.
Yeah.
But I imagine that's something you must have experienced quite a lot in the game.
Yeah, like there's no way that you could knock on the manager's door prior to a game and be like, I'm really struggling here, Gaffer. Like, regardless of whatever manager, and it's not sort of discrediting managers, but simply because they're so focused on getting the result on the weekend. Like, it's such a highly pressurized environment, and it's like, if you went in and said I'm struggling, like you wouldn't be involved in that playing squad on Saturday, like simply because the risk is too much. But yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be spoken about more, and actually like support mechanisms and frameworks actually delivered in, because yeah, like I've seen it a lot, and I've had a lot of players reach out to me because they've sort of seen me do that transition from sport into, a different industry, and be as passionate in that industry as I was about sport. And so yeah, like I've seen it and I can see it happening firsthand. So
yeah.
Okay.
Would you get into managing or coaching, or would you bring that side of the game into your life again?
No, I think like it's such a massive commitment. As I said, like as a manager, you need to be even more committed than the players. Like you need to be first one there, last one leaving, to be successful. So yeah, for me at this stage, like I'm 36 years of age, I'm still relatively young, generally, but yeah, like I'm clear on what I'm trying to do and focus on.
Have you sponsored a football team yet?
Yeah, we've done a few partnerships. We've not done front of shirt sponsorship yet. We'll aim to get to that.
It's got to happen at some
it's got
point,
to,
hasn't it?
Yeah. So we need
got a little West Brom or a Reading.
Yeah, would be pretty cool. So, but yeah, we're working towards it. So watch this space for sure.
Great.
All right, well, listen, I'm a regular with the turmeric. I'm a subscriber, as you know. Talk us through the raw hydrate.
Can I have one of these?
Yes,
Because
go on.
I'm feeling if it's going to solve the hand.
Mate, honestly,
consistency.
that little Suarez thing you've got on the Benzema on your hand.
Benzema.
Do you want me to open it?
The minute you have that shot, mate, it's going to come off.
Embarrassing, mate.
Honestly, mate, you'll be high-fiving 5-year-olds in no time.
Come on.
Have it down in one, mate.
Go on, mate.
The thing is with this, it's not some miracle cure. It's the idea of a balanced, healthy lifestyle. I'm imagining.
Yeah,
this
correct.
is part of it.
Yeah. So there's nutrients, macronutrients, micronutrients.
Get ready for a bit
in
of
there.
spice.
Go on, down in one. There we go.
There's a little bit of a kick in there.
So that is all raw, all functional ingredients, no apple juice, no orange juice, no water. Those are cheap fillers.
Do you know, it makes you feel...
Look at that.
bit
The
like-
risk is coming back, isn't it?
It's a bit like an ice bath for your insides or something.
A nice bar for your insides. You can have that.
That's our
for your
marketing
mums. You can have
slogan.
that one.
It's a bit of a shock, isn't it? It's
Yeah, it's proper stuff. It's proper stuff.
Might put a few hairs on my chest. There's none there. Smooth as a dolphin. I am.
Yeah.
You're
Not
the
like
same, aren't you?
Silly's the dolphin, isn't he?
Yeah, Silly's been on
ginger dolphin.
Silly's been on the shots.
Have a little go.
Yeah, go give it a shake. But then this one, so this is whole crushed watermelon juice. So again, like
Pure hydration.
pure hydration. Like, and this is our innovation. So this is a new brand that we've launched, stocked in Sainsbury's, but natural electrolytes hydrate much better than typical sort of like hydration sports drinks, which are laced full of sugar and sweeteners. So yeah, it's major.
That's lovely, that, mate.
Yeah, it's major.
I'll be honest with you, I had a few at Ascot yesterday.
Yeah,
and
nice. Perfect
the
timing.
raw hydrate is ideal
Perfect timing.
for exactly how I'm feeling. I think.
Yeah, nice.
All right. Listen, how great to have you on, mate. We've got a couple of messages if you wouldn't mind sticking around for those.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
okay?
absolute pleasure.
Right, I've got a few messages here if you don't mind. Hi, Peter Crouch, Stephen Sidwell and Chris Stark. Very formal. Could you please tell us more about your appearance on Rio Ferdinand's World Cup wind-ups? I've watched the show at least once a year since it came out. I'd love to know the process behind you getting murked. Kind regards, Alex Skolnick from Newcastle.
This needs to come back, by the way. It was
Punked.
his version of Punked, wasn't it?
Remember Punked? It was
Yeah,
Ashton
of course.
Kutcher, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Rio did one around the World Cup and...
You got murked.
I did get murked, yeah. And it was basically Robbie Fowler at the training ground said to me, there's a guy, a big Liverpool fan, who's doing a big development in Dubai or somewhere. He wants to come meet you. And I was like, look, Rob, I'm not really that interested. And he was like, you got to come meet him because he's giving him half price. I went there. Straight away, I thought, there's something going on. There was a very small man answered the door, and he got on a ladder to look through the peephole. Obviously, I couldn't see this, but there was a camera on the show. And he answered the door anyway. Anyway, these two kind of women in dressing gowns kind of ran through. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Then all of a sudden, these Russian gangsters come in, and they take the man who's doing the pitch, and they threaten to cut his hand off. And I'm like, whoa, like, what's going on here? Anyway, Rio comes in. It's a bit like Beatles about it. I remember, he got in a bit of trouble for that because he did Beck's.
Didn't Beck's end up running down the road?
Yeah. So David Beckham because it was around a time where it was just carnage for him.
Yeah.
He's getting papped everywhere he goes. So he got in the footwell of the car.
Yeah.
Underneath the Lowry, hiding. But the camera's already rigged with a camera, right? So we're just seeing kind of a glimpse into his lifestyle where he's hiding in the back of his car.
Goodness me.
And he's got a hat on. Anyway, he gets in the car, he drives out, and then he kind of pops up when he's realised he's shaken all the paparazzi off. And then he jumps up and the fellow goes, oh, David Beckham. And he goes, yeah. He goes, oh, I'm going to take you to my friend. He loves you. And he's gone, no, mate, I'm just going to the shop and then I'm quickly going back. And he goes, nah, he'll love you, you'll love it. And obviously he panics. So he's driving through kind of Moss Side, Manchester now. And Bex is thinking he's getting kidnapped, right? So then he just jumps out the car, starts running down the road.
No way.
And now Rio's running after him. And like running down the middle of Manchester with the camera crew going, no, Bex, it's just me. Like,
Imagine you're in that traffic jam.
yeah, well, you see Bex running down the road.
Crazy. We should on that as well. It's a couple of weeks old, this news, but I don't think we've had a chance to catch up on it. Finally got the knighthood.
Sir David Beckham.
Sir David Beckham.
Sir David.
Well done.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It just
Long
shows
overdue, really.
long overdue.
Keep
Yeah.
grafting. It's what you were saying.
grafted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's move on. Crouchy, Sidwell, Stark, and Robson-Kanu today. Regards to all your family. Playing FIFA or FC25, whatever it's called these days. I get approached by a reserve telling me they are playing well at the moment and hope they won't be benched. I reply with a nondescript, I haven't made my mind up on the team yet, or some nonsense as it's a computer game, it doesn't really matter. But I was wondering, does this sort of thing happen in real football? Do players approach the manager and ask to play? Did any of you ever do it? Cheers, that's Gordon, Hearts fan up in Bonnie, Scotland. How do you want to answer this one? Have you ever gone to see the manager?
Yeah, to be honest, I think any player, if you're not playing, you're knocking on the manager's door all of the time. So yeah, if ever I wasn't being featured, you want to know why. And yeah, I think it's easy for a lot of managers if they've got a selection issue to go with the less hassle. So sometimes kicking up a fuss, it can work in your favour. So yeah, how about yourself?
I 100% agree with that. I think these days though, things are different. I think a lot of players would hide behind an agent now. I remember seeing it, and it was something I disliked towards the end of my career. I was like, if you've got a problem, you go and see the manager. It's we're all grown men here.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, I kept seeing it all the time towards the end of my career, agents coming in and family members, and I'm like, always get it all the time.
But then if that's happening all the time, do managers now expect to have to deal with agents, and therefore you look a tad unprofessional if you go to the manager yourself? Or do you think 9 times out of 10 the manager would probably respect it?
I genuinely think manager would respect the fact that you go face to face and speak to you know, and also hiding behind social media and putting agents putting something out, or sometimes we've had it with wives and brothers and sisters. Hold on a minute. I think if that was me as a player, I'd be embarrassed by that sort of behaviour.
Yeah, but it's another generation now, isn't it? And I think that the culture in football is changing. There's a lot more mollycoddling of players now because it's a different generation. And a lot of the players now probably have grown up with social media at the forefront of their lives. So that human one-to-one connection that you'd be Gaffer, can we ever talk? They just don't get it.
But you know what? I remember a couple of times where I'd go in the morning fuming. I hadn't played the week before, And I'd go right, and I'd kind of chill on the way to training a bit, listen to a few tunes, and by the time I get in there, I was like, oh, not as angry as I was, you know. So I remember going up there and going, right, I'm going to do it. I've got to do it. I walk up and I go, whoa, and I should go and get a cup of tea. And then you kind of build yourself up to go, no, I've got to do it. And you couldn't shit yourself. So I ended up going, right, I'm in. Because sometimes, you know, Harry Redknapp's got you know, you can cut you down, people like that, like Rafa, and explain the situation. You can end up out of the team for a lot. It can do more harm than good sometimes.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Okay, last one. Hello to three of the buggers. I'm emailing in from Christchurch, New Zealand. I grew up in Brentford, not too far away from the old Griffin Park Stadium, not too far from us.
Yeah.
Fellow West London boy.
Correct.
On the last podcast episode, you asked if there were any 20-mile-an-hour speed cameras anywhere in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
It is a football podcast, Hal, but sometimes we get into the nitty-gritty, some serious things like 20-mile-an-hour cameras. It just so happens there is a 20-mile-an-hour speed camera on the Ealing Road in Brentford. I checked Google Maps, it's still there. I reckon you should get together some absolutely rapid Premier League players and see if you can get any of them to trigger the speed camera by sprinting past.
This is why we were talking about it. We were saying, what a great photo would be if you can be fast enough to trigger a speed camera.
Could Gareth Bale, if we look at it here, we've got Nunes, Mbuemo, Minter and Alanga all over 20 miles an hour in the Premier League last year.
22 miles. What was your top speed crash?
We did look at it. I was third slowest of all time. Is that correct?
17.76.
There you
That's
go.
not bad, yeah.
Bearing in mind that was one season. I struggled that year. I had an injury.
There you go, Adam. That was from Adam, that message. What we can do is add that to the list of things that we need to try.
Yeah, can you mark that down, Ross, that we need to get, you know, Gareth Bale on the Ealing Road? Right, Hal, just before we go, how good was Gareth Bale? Like, you know, and I also think of that the dynamic in the Wales dressing room. Sometimes you've got kind of League of Wales players or, you know, players from League One mixing with the likes of Ramsey, Joe Allen, as you say, and Gareth Bale. How is that dynamic?
Yeah, to be honest, I think the biggest thing, like in that Welsh team, like there was very few egos, and obviously you played with Bale. Like he's, you know, likes nice things, likes to do things properly, but he's not got a massive ego. Like he's not gonna. He knows he's the best player. You know, he knows what he can do, but he's not gonna be sort of rubbishing another player about where they're playing or whatever. So I think that was the first sort of like element of the ability for players at different levels, whether it was, you know, Champions League through to Championship or League One, being able to play together. But yeah, like I just remember, I think he was about to move to Madrid. So it was under Andre Villas-Boas that season. And we had a camp mid-season and it was a 11-a-side on half a pitch, but it was quite tight because the width was only the 18-yard box. So it was a real tight session. Like everyone's playing like 11v11. And he was like off the striker. It dropped off. I was playing in front of him. And fullback Neil Taylor's like fizzed the ball into him, like in the pocket. And he's like spooned it. So it's gone sort of like waist height up to Balo. And it's probably like 3 feet to the side of him. And I remember just like thinking, there's no way he's going to control that at all. And he's just literally plucked his foot up in the air, moved his body and touched the ball. And the ball's literally like been killed dead stop in his path. And I was like, that is insane. Like that ability to control.
Really?
Yeah, it was just like, that is like world class. And yeah, like I saw him do some insane things with the ball.
Yeah, incredible player. It was a privilege. Well, also a privilege to have you on today, Hal. And you know, good luck with the business. I know it's flying, but it's something that I've had in my life for a while now. I remember I interviewed you a while back. I think you might be even still playing. It might have been just before the Euros, actually.
Yeah.
And I remember you put it onto me and you sold it to me then, and obviously you sold it to me again now.
Also, I feel like a dragon or something, being in the presence of someone that...
Yeah, I'm going to invest. I'm actually going to make you an offer.
It's a new podcast sponsor, Crouch. Just get it on there, mate. Get it on there.
It's £3 for 50% of the company. No, absolute pleasure, mate. You're a top guy.
Cheers.
And really appreciate having you on.
Thank you for having me, guys. Cheers.